Dan with the Corporate Thief Beats. I got a very special guest today. His name is Corey Kohler, and he's from musicgoat.com. And Corey's a musician and an online marketing geek who shares his strategies that he uses to promote his own music online with other musicians who are looking to build a fan base and sell more music. Corey, so happy to have you on the show. Maybe you can give the audience just a brief introduction to who you are and what you do, pal.
All right. Sounds good. I'm thinking I might have to tweak my little spiel there in the beginning, because it took a while to get out of there. So I'm going to have to rethink that one. And anyway, I want to thank you for having me on the show. It's always fun to get on a podcast and just geek out about music and music marketing. I never, ever pass up an opportunity to do that. So anyway, who am I? My name is Corey Kohler, and I'm from Minnesota, a little small town next to the Mississippi River in the United States. And I started, I'm kind of a late blooming musician. I didn't start until I was in my 30s. And basically, I don't know how it happened. Just kind of, I guess the music chose me, I guess. I've always been a music fan, but eventually I learned I could sing and write songs. And as I did that, I had musicians always ask me, like, hey, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? And basically I just started sharing with them, and they seemed to like the information. So I kept on doing that. And as I was doing that, I kept on learning. I'm also a marketing geek, so it's like I like to learn how to market my stuff online. So it just all kind of naturally led to this point where I've got the musician side of me, and then I've also got this music marketing guru side of me, which I should not have called myself a guru, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or this information teacher guy. So anyway.
Corey, the reason why I brought Corey on the podcast today is because he's got a great blog. Please check out musicgoat.com because it's got a great blog and there's some great stuff in here. And I'm going to kind of talk about some of the posts that Corey uses in his blog. And one that stuck out for me, and I usually do this a lot, Corey, on the podcast, because I find it's just something that I just think we should always be drilling this kind of stuff into musicians, is the 9 mistakes that most musicians need to stop doing. And I'll just kind of briefly mention one, and you can give a little point on each of them. Is that okay, pal?
Sounds great.
Yeah, so your first point is spamming friends and family. Okay,
this one here is this is one that I think I'm going to revise just a little bit since I wrote that post. But the main concept behind this is, eventually your friends and your family, especially the ones that don't necessarily care about your music, because they might just be being nice to you. I know I've been reading this book called Originals. Adam Grant is his name, which I recommend to everybody. It's kind of cool. But he talks about this thing where, it's almost you're like an enemy when somebody just kind of is like a lukewarm kind of friend. They tell you that, yeah, that's great. You're not getting any real feedback from your family and friends. And, you're probably annoying the hell out of them. And they're not necessarily the best people to ask how things are going. So I guess to me, that's the main thing, that would be kind of the main concept behind spam your friends. But at the same time, when you're just starting out, or maybe there's big, huge points in your career, you got big album launches or something like that, it's not a bad idea to at least throw the stuff out to everybody that and at least give them the opportunity to either like it themselves or share it with someone else that they think might like it. But once that happens, if they don't jump on your email list or if they don't want to participate beyond that, stop. Don't go any further. So that's a slight variation to what I had said in that blog post, which I should update someday.
No problem. That's kind of cool. Yeah. You said that you yourself kind of made the mistake of hiring PR groups. And why is it bad? Why did you think it was a mistake to hire a PR group?
It's not, I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think PR is a mistake. I think that it's a timing thing. A lot of musicians that I've seen, they have their first album, their first song, their first whatever, and they go out and they pay thousands of dollars to get some PR done. But the problem is well, they're not set up for it. They're not capturing emails. They're not in a position to really build a relationship with a fan base. So anybody that would, so what happens all the time is somebody has this new song, this new whatever, and they go and they hire this PR agency. They spend like, I don't know how many thousands of dollars. All these people, you generate all this interest. You're getting all these people coming back to your website, if you even have a website, and you don't try to engage with them. You don't get them to get on a thing. So they're here today and then they're gone tomorrow. So you basically just kind of blew everything. You didn't capture anybody. You didn't start a fan base. You just generated all this buzz, and now you have nothing to do with it. So I think a lot of people, what you should do is, you know what, start very organically. You know what, reach out to your friends. Okay, great. You find a couple that like it in your family that want to help out or whatever. You get them on the email list. Then you move on to the next step. You find a good place, like maybe like a Twitter, and then you start to reach out to people, try to share your music and try to get them to, you know, get on the email list. And then you just start building a relationship with them, sharing stuff, you know, and then you do it. And while you're doing that, you're learning a lot, you know, about your fan base, but you're also learning a lot about your music and, you know, what your capabilities are, you know, what people like most about it. And you also have this email list in place. So you're able to capture these people so that you can continue building a relationship. Every time you have a new release in the future, you can send something out and you grow it that way. Well, then once you have that stuff in place, now you're going to know what to say when you do a PR campaign, you know, so you're going to get more bang for your buck. Not only that, but you're going to be able to capture people because you already have this email list and you're already comfortable with doing this stuff. And you're going to be able to understand how to talk with these people. You're going to understand how to keep them around and keep them engaged. You know, so PR is not a bad thing. I know people have yelled at me before, like, "Oh, you're crazy, man," you know, whatever. But it's just mainly they do it at the wrong times. You know, like do it after you have some experience and a way to capture people. That's all I'm saying. So it'd still be a good thing.
Yeah. You also say that you see a lot of musicians that don't have a website. What would you say to people that are kind of using like, oh, Corey, I don't really need a website. Like I've got a Facebook page, I've got a YouTube channel. What's the point of having a website? Like I can just send them a link to a PayPal button. They can buy my music there. Yeah,
well, I can't argue with them on that. But the issue comes when and there's I don't know where I got this, but there's always that concept of building your house on rented land. You know, like you got this great house that you own, but you know, one day the landlord or the person that owns the land's like, you know what, I don't want you to be on my land anymore. So what are you gonna do? Pick up your house and you're gonna have to move. Well, that same kind of concept applies to like social media sites. Facebook, you know, it's funny. I was just listening to your last week's podcast that you did. You kind of talked about the same thing. MySpace, perfect example. You know, everybody like built these huge followings on MySpace, and guess where MySpace is now? It's completely gone. It's not there anymore. So they put all this time and effort into it. Now, had they built a website behind MySpace, and it's like, you know, they use MySpace to generate traffic and to generate, you know, interest. Now, if they would have channeled all them to an email list or onto a website where they could capture their email list, then, you know, MySpace goes away. Now you can channel, you know, that email list and all that traffic that you've built up on your own site. You can channel that into the next big thing, the Facebook or whatever. And then again, even on Facebook didn't go away, but what they did is they limited the amount of reach exactly, you know, for whatever. So you don't own, you know, your likes anymore. Nobody that likes your page sees your stuff unless you pay or unless you're really good at creating content consistently at the right time, right place, or whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But the main thing is like, you know what, build something of your own that you can always control the conversation, you can control everything. And so that's why I think you need a website. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just, you know, get something up that collects emails, and I think it'd be good.
And you also say about sending kind of sales messages all the time.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. What do you send?
Oh, sending out like pitches and, oh, okay, I've built an email list, or I've got this kind of blog or Twitter following now. I can just sell them music all the time now. That's all I do.
Oh, endlessly pitching. Okay, that's what you're talking about. Okay, so no, yeah, that's with any marketing, really. You know, I do I do consulting for like other businesses around town. Like I got a client that sells hoists, and I got a client that sells, IT services, and it's like the fundamentals are the same, whether you're doing music or whatever. You can't just sit there and, it's like being at a party. I hear this analogy a lot, and that's a good one. But you're at a party. If you just sit there and talk about yourself like constantly, people are going to start zoning you out. They're going to start tuning you out. They don't really care after a while. You know what I mean? Unless, I'm sure there's that exception. But at some point, you got to ask about other people. You got to share stuff that other people like. You can't just talk about yourself all the time. You can't just ask for the sale every 5 seconds, because people don't necessarily want to buy your stuff every 5 seconds. I mean, you got to, there's like with 80-20 rule, it's like every 10 things you send out, 8 of them should be just sharing and engaging with people, and then 20% every once in a while, be like, hey, by the way, we've been having this great conversation. Just curious, if you want to check out my music, it'd be great if you could, don't be doing it constantly. And I see musicians doing that all the time. You see them on Twitter, they send you something. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Can you go like me on Facebook, like me on Instagram, and then swing over to Snapchat and do this? And then, oh, by the way, you want to buy a song? I mean, it's just like, why would anybody? They don't even give me a good reason why. I don't even know who they are, and they're already asking to take me out and sleep with me.
I know what you're trying to say.
Date me first.
I watched your some of your videos on your site, and the fan finder video kind of really spoke to me. And there was a question that I think kind of is a pain of most musicians. Why aren't you making money with your music? Maybe Corey kind of would like to elaborate on that, like a little bit.
Why are they not making music? Well, that's like a huge question. It's a loaded question. I think there's a lot of factors. First of all, we kind of talked about some of the stuff, earlier on, like with some of the mistakes. I mean, all those mistakes could be reasons. I think a lot of times people will just whip up. I think production can be an issue. I think one thing that I did when I first started is I heard a lot of people. I was doing a podcast with my musical site for a long time. I did about 40 episodes, and a lot of musicians sent me music, and it was just crazy how much the amount of money they spent on something and the amount of time they spent on it, and it wasn't produced very well. I mean, it basically sounded like they had a recorder in the corner of a very echoey room, and they just hit play, and then that's what they used. And it's like, I just think that if you're gonna do something, you should be serious about it. Invest in good recordings. If you don't know how to do it yourself, find somebody that is good at it, because that is the nuts and bolts of everything. I mean, if people don't think people aren't going to take you serious if you're just thrown out there. And I know there's a lot of artistic stuff out there. I mean, you could say like, well, great, maybe that's what you're going for. Great. If that's what you're going for, great. But otherwise, I'm thinking you really should invest in your sound and what a good production. Some other things they don't do is they don't focus on the right people. How many times you see people out there, like, you're a country artist and you're out there like blasting it out to everybody. You're sitting there trying to pitch some dude that loves he loves Motorhead, right? And you're sitting there trying to tell him how awesome your music is and why he needs to listen to. He doesn't care. First of all, he doesn't even like the style of music that you're trying to pitch to him. And I think a lot of people do that. They cast this wide net. I think artists need to be a little more laser focused. Find bands that are very similar to you, and then just try to get into that particular one and find the niche. Don't just blast it out there to everybody, because you're wasting your time and you're also wasting a lot of other people's time. So focus on the right people. Another thing is communicating with fans. This isn't the old days where cameras are going to follow you around everywhere and you're Led Zeppelin and you don't have to talk with anybody and keep this mystique up. I'm sure there's a couple of exceptions out there, but I think you need to show people that you're a real person, and you need to show them that you're that you're real, that you're the person behind the music. I think that's going to go a long ways. It's going to make them want to support you if they like you. So that's a big one. A few other ones, what are some of what did you get here? Oh, bogged down with marketing. That's like probably the worst thing. That's one of the biggest things that I've done. I'm probably kind of a hypocrite still, because I still I still go off the deep end.
Mm.
But I think one thing to do is just find a couple social networks or find something that works and then just do that over and over, and just get really good at that before you start trying to get on every social network and try and Snapchat me, because you're just, so.
Yeah.
Those are a few things.
I understand where you're coming from there, yeah. But I'm a victim of getting bogged down with marketing too. Like, obviously, I have kind of a music marketing blog too, and I kind of only set up the music marketing kind of thing because I was kind of getting asked, oh, why are you doing this? Or I don't know, a lot of kind of hip hop artists or other kind of hip hop beat makers kind of asked me the same kind of questions over and over again, like, and so I just decided to start writing that marketing blog. But sometimes I do kind of get overzealous with the marketing. But then again, at the same day, I kind of like the fact that I know it. So when there comes to a time where I'm going to outsource this, I can kind of understand what my team is doing. I think it's a good idea to understand, just because you've got a marketing team doesn't mean they're actually doing the stuff that actually is needed to be done. Just like what you said about the PR kind of groups as well. Maybe sometimes they kind of just don't have that kind of focus that you need, or that kind of, you said that you make country music, and people in the kind of country niche kind of really like that kind of personal kind of part.
And that's a really good point, as far as, I mean, I guess when I say bogged down, I guess I don't mean, the way you put it is very good, because you're right. You should have a very good understanding of everything to, I'm not saying you have to take a deep dive into every aspect of marketing, but just familiarizing yourself with different parts of the business, just so that you can know if you're getting jacked around or whatever. But ultimately, there's only a few things that are just going to be putting fans on your email list. Like for me, one of the big things I've really focused on, especially the last 3 months, just to give a little pimp to my buddy Carlos, Captain Schwilly Family Music.
Yes.
I always had a Twitter strategy, but he kind of really did a great job of like focusing. He found a few things I was doing wrong that really helped. And so the last 3 months, that's all I've been doing. No matter what I do, every single day I spend time working Twitter and some of the strategies that I use there, because I know that it's putting people onto my email list. It's like, so if there's only one thing I do all day long with my marketing, it's like, I don't try to do 50 things. I always do that one thing. I spend that half hour, that hour every single day, or, 5 out of 7 days a week. I always do that. And I guess that would be what I'm talking about. You're always going to have the learning phase where you're going to need to set things up. You're going to have to set up your email list. You're going to have to set up where you're going to sell your music, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's where you find something that works and just keep hammering at it, and then when you get time, maybe look into something else, but always maintain that, that thing that's working, and for me right now, that's Twitter. So I'm constantly doing that, and I'm adding people on a regular basis to my email list. So that's the bottom line.
Excellent answer there, pal. Yeah, that was good. And it was funny that you met Captain Swilly as well, because I just kind of contacted him as well. So hopefully he can get back to me when he's free, and maybe we can get him on the kind of, because he's got some really cool stuff to talk about too.
Yeah, he does. He's a great guy too.
Yeah. So moving on, in the fan finder. So like, you said like, oh, we got to get the right people to listen to you, and being the targeted listeners. We don't want metalheads listening to us when we're hip hop guys, and we don't want hip hop guys listening to us when we're metalheads. So like this. So when you say finding the right people to listen to, is it just, okay, this guy has got 1,000 followers that are on Twitter that are hip hop guys? Maybe I should just follow all these guys. Is that the kind of thing that we need to be kind of doing?
I would say that is probably a good place to start. However, I think you can go deeper than that, because there's so much more to be had, by drilling a little deeper. And part of the thing when I built that fan finder stuff is it was based on I do a lot of Facebook marketing before. I know you were talking that you did that as well, but before you start a campaign on Facebook or anything like with Google, you have to really think about who you're going to promote this to. Otherwise, you're blowing a lot of money. You're going to waste a lot of money on ads. So you need to think about, and I do this in that course, is I walk you through, like, there's like 20 different questions you got to ask yourself. Like what is, what are my fans more likely to be male or female? I mean, you might market to both, but you have to go through this. What age are they? Because as you go through all these questions, where do they hang out? What kind of other music do they listen to? Do they read books? Because as you do this, you start to build kind of like an avatar, like a person. And then once you have this clear vision, that opens up a lot of opportunities that you might not see, and in other ways. Like for instance, like I was telling you about my Twitter thing before. With my audience, I noticed that, and this is something you're not going to find out unless you kind of get in there and think about it. But with my audience, it's like, they like old cheesy 80s movies. I do too. I'll throw out a thing like with Smokey and the Bandit. I'll have like the Bandit says hello today. And everybody, I get like tons of likes on it and clicks. But you know what? Unless I really thought about who my audience was, I wouldn't have thought of that. But yet it drew attention to me, and it kind of helped me get to know them a little bit better. So it's always good. And I think too, like, you can be, and just to use hip hop for an example, you can be, you can go out there and promote to like Jay-Z fans, and you can go out there and promote to Dr. Dre fans or whatever. And I'm probably dating myself a little bit, but I think where the real fans are, like, I think what you'll find is, like, maybe you get into, like, maybe you find that, the Jay-Z fans, a lot of them are just kind of like half-ass music fans. They're not totally into it. But I think if you drill down and maybe you go after like a Tech Nine or something like that, you're gonna find people that like really are into music. They're probably gonna be more likely to support you. And I think the only way you find opportunities like that is to understand who your audience is and to really start experimenting, because that's what happened with me. I mean, I started like with these big time country artists. But now I'm like, I've drilled down what some of these exercises and trying to really understand your fan is going to help you. It just saves a lot of time, and it really helps you hyper focus your marketing across the board. So that's why.
Excellent answer, man. That was a really, really good answer, Val. Fair play to you. You kind of shared a lot with us there. And it's kind of funny that you mentioned something as well that kind of struck a chord to me. So I don't want to interrupt you when you're talking, but you struck a chord to me there where you said, like, oh, should my fans be male or female? Which one of them is actually buying the music and the finish of it, stuff like that. And it was funny when I was doing some kind of Facebook kind of ads and stuff like that, I thought the younger the audience I would get would be more into the music that I create, which they're great for likes, shares, comments, and stuff like that. But it was actually a different demographic that I found from my audience that actually buys music. It was actually people in their late 20s to 35 even, which is some kind of a wake-up call for me, which they were the guys that buy beats. They were the guys that took serious. Everyone else was just kind of coming to download the free stuff, which is fine. If you want to take the free stuff, maybe you'll come back and buy some beats some other time. But I thought it's good to stress the point that you made on the importance of knowing your audience and kind of learning about them and kind of asking questions and finding answers as well.
The age, I found that to be a huge factor with some of the stuff I was doing as well, because I found the same thing. Like, a lot of people these days are like, oh, you got to cater to the millennials and this and that. And it's like, I get that, and I'm sure that they're a very powerful force. But for me, the kind of music that I make, and just my own personality that helps me resonate more with the audience is the fact that I'm from a generation, I'm 43, I'm from the 80s, right? We were still going to a record store, and we were, I was buying like cassette tapes, and I was like, my music experience, at least from my generation, is way different than like some of the millennials these days. They're just getting like a fire hose blasted at them with information and music. Whereas like, I can relate with my fan base because we all still remember this time when we got home. Like, I rode my bike in the rain to get the brand new release that was at the, that was at the record store.
Yeah.
I'd go to Face the Music, and I come home and then I listen to that thing over and over. So it's like, I'm going to relate better with those people more than I am. So if I just cut out I focus more on a particular age group, maybe let's just say 35 to 50, or maybe even a little older, because they are also falling in that. It just saves a lot of time, and it makes the conversations a lot more authentic. So I think that's the nuts and the bolts of really defining your audience, before you start doing stuff. So there you go.
Excellent, Paul. Just you kind of mentioned this kind of already, but I do like the kind of topics that you talk about with email and the importance of email. But maybe you can kind of just tell people about like what they could do if, okay, I've got a website set up, I've got a Twitter account, just people coming to my site and they're actually coming to download a track by signing up to my email list. What now? What's the kind of the interaction that we should be kind of doing once we have them on your email list to keep them interested?
Well, one of the things that you might do is like on your welcome email, you're going to send them their free thing that you gave to them. And maybe you try to start the conversation right away. Maybe you, I know we talked about this before the show. We were a big fan of a guy named Derek Halpern on Social Triggers, where every time he would send an email, he would ask you right in there. First thing, he'd be like, I want you to reply to this email and tell me, what you're struggling with. For an artist, some of the stuff I'm playing with is like, reply to this email. Tell me what you think is missing in music these days, or tell me who some of your favorite country artists are, or whatever it is, because that's going to give you intel, but it's also going to get them replying. Not everybody's going to reply, but it's going to get them replying to you. So you're starting this conversation with them. Sometimes you might have like 5, 6 different emails. So now this person is like extremely engaged in what you do. They're probably more likely to go listen to your other stuff. They're going to give your album a real deep listen now because you're talking with them. So that would be one thing you could do right out of the gate. It also, too, from a technical standpoint, it also gets them opening more emails, and it's also telling, like, say, Gmail that, okay, this is a trusted source, and we're going to show this email, and it's not going to go in a spam filter. But, so that's maybe what you do the first email. Then right away, I'm experimenting with a lot of stuff, so I don't want to go nuts, but maybe now then you maybe come back the second day with another song, like, hey, here's another free song for you, or another free thing, or here's a video that I did, where all my fans helped me out on it. You kind of tell your story little by little, and maybe like a couple days later, you just kind of share stuff. You get the conversation, you get them in the habit of opening your emails, because once they get in the habit, then they start to look forward to it. Then maybe 4 or 5 emails down the road, you can be like, hey, by the way, I do have my music for sale over here, like if you wanted to check it out, so that would be, in a very non-specific way.
It's like, oh, maybe you give them a music video today, and then the second part was like, oh, this is behind the scenes. This is how fans help me create the music.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So basically, the first email, you're gonna try to engage with them right away, give them their free thing, let them know what they can expect and what you're all about, a little bit. Don't get too wordy, you don't want to keep them there for too long. But just send out an email the next day with another free song, maybe a story behind it, maybe it could be a video, maybe it could be maybe a live performance, something that you could just send to them, and and do that over the course of the next week, just to get them in the habit of opening your emails. Because once they're in the habit, it's just going to help with a lot of things. Technically, it's going to help you. It's going to help their email service provider to know that you're not spam and that you're going to make it through there, but you're just going to endear them to you. So maybe you send out a few of these different kinds of emails, and then maybe on the 4th or 5th email, that's when you can bring up the idea or bring up the subject of like, hey, I also have this music for sale on iTunes, or I have it for sale on Bandcamp, or whatever it is, wherever you are. And then just drive them there. And I bet you, if you've done a good enough job in the first 3 or so emails, they're going to be more likely to purchase something from you, and there's a lot of other more technical and different ways to do all of this. But I think just for the average musician just starting out, if you can just do that at the very minimum, just get people on an email list and just start the conversation with them, share a few things. You're going to be a lot farther along. And it's going to be a good start to kind of working it out as you build your email list. You know, you can always try different stuff because you've got these people forever now. You know, as long as they want to stay on there, as long as they don't make them mad or alienate them, you have these people to always tell about the next thing that you have. So that's the beauty of email.
Yeah, and this kind of brings on to the next point, because you kind of said this before. You were talking about MySpace finishing, and you said if all those people had an email list, they could send them to a social network. But you said that on some of your videos that you should really only focus on 2 social media channels and pick your best one. Why do you say, why not try and be on all of them? Why do you say to just kind of focus only on 2? Well,
take it from a guy who has been on like every freaking social media site that ever popped up, you know, over the last 10 years. I'm kind of laying back nowadays. But that's more of a beginner thing, right? I mean, in the beginning, you should just find a few that really work for you. You know, like, where is your audience? And this goes back to really identifying your audience. Like, do you find that more of your people are on Facebook? Great. Spend time. Learn all you can about Facebook. Do you find that they're all on Twitter? Great. Learn about Twitter and spend time getting better at engaging with people on Twitter. Instagram, same thing. You know, pick 1 or 2 of them. I mean, there are some that are kind of, you can do them together. But it's really difficult, and it gets very frustrating, and it's very hard to engage and keep an authentic face when you're trying to manage, like, you know, 6 different, you know, social media sites. You know, I always think of the you know, picture the guy spinning plates. Do you ever see those dudes like on like talent shows? He's got like 10 plates. He's trying to spin them all. That's kind of what social media is like. You can easily spin 2 plates, but once you start to get the 3 or 4, they're going to start falling and breaking. You know what I mean? I just think I just tell that to all the newer musicians, because that's what happens. I was guilty of it too. But you start to like look at every shiny new social music object that comes down the pike, and then before you know it, you're just stressed out and you're not focusing on stuff you should be focusing on. So that's the only reason.
One of your strong points is using Twitter. Do you think Twitter is a very kind of easy place to start when someone doesn't have any kind of following online?
I think that it is, and the reason why is because the direct messaging thing is kind of a key element, and just the personal interaction, just because it's kind of like an open forum kind of a situation. Facebook, you know, you have to be friends with them right away, or, you know, to even engage with them, unless, you know, the business page. But Twitter, you can really just kind of get in there and start the conversation yourself, you know, and as long as you do it in the right way, you know, you can start to make some headway. So that's the reason why I've tried not to be on Twitter, and I've tried other things, but for me, it seems to continue to work very well. I've also seen artists that are doing really great on something like Instagram. I know Snapchat's becoming like a big deal now, musically. And I'm just throwing, I don't want to like bombard people with stuff, but I'm just saying each one of these platforms, it could be your thing. You know what I mean? Wherever you think your audience is where you need to be. You know, for me, Twitter seems to be working. I also do a decent amount on Facebook, just because it's kind of a generational thing, and I got a lot of people over there. So yeah, but I get some reaction playing around with Instagram. So there's any one of those could be good. Just stick with 1 or 2, and you know, just to start out.
Okay, I kind of understand where you're coming from. You might be able to burn yourself out by doing too many at once. Maybe if you're just starting out, like Twitter, I feel that Twitter is the easiest one to start out, because you don't really have to spend money with Twitter right away. If you want to kind of set up campaigns later on, which I'm kind of testing at the moment. If I have to be honest, I think Twitter is a lot more expensive. But then again, if you do some kind of tricks that you kind of learn later on, you might get it down a little bit. But it's a lot more. If I found that the ads on Twitter were just way more expensive than Facebook, and I wasn't getting the kind of return that I kind of liked getting. I was kind of too used to the return. Okay, if I spend, let's say, $5 a day on Facebook, I'm getting a better return than I'm spending $5 on Twitter. And even no matter how much time I try to optimize the kind of ads on Twitter, it just kind of, but you can start off for free really on Twitter, and you can cultivate your own audience for free. Whereas you used a great word in what you said. Twitter is like an open forum. We used to go on forums. Do you remember there was a time there where forums was what we used to do? Or when it was MySpace time, we still the forum was still kind of popular at that time. And you could oh, sorry, I'm kind of interrupting you. Sorry, Mel.
No, actually, I thought you were finished. I was just going to say, to use a forum as an example, yes, you're right. They were popular before, but I bet you any amount of money, well, I shouldn't say that, but I bet you that there are still forums out there that musicians could have success on, dealing with theirs. There's probably a We Geek Out About EDM.com forum, right? I mean, you could go on there and not even focus on a Twitter or a Facebook and probably crush it over there. Like Reddit. I mean, it all goes back to understanding who your audience is, because those might be nice little hidden pockets of stuff, out there, and, but yeah, and like you said, you don't have to spend any money on Twitter. I mean, I spend a few bucks, minuscule amounts of money on some tools, but even that, you can still do it right out of the gate. That was one of the things, on my 30-minute fan finder stuff, I threw in a really simple Twitter, course, I mean, just to get people, thinking about it. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's it's very inexpensive. But yeah, no, Twitter is a great place to start, but don't rule anything else out, until you kind of look at it.
And maybe just if you have that email list, and if you're building that email list, maybe the good thing is to kind of come back to them and just ask where your fans, which kind of social network they actually prefer, which might be a good idea in the first place. When it might be coming to one of your those kind of email drip feed email campaigns that we kind of do as well. Yep.
And you might even see on Twitter, you can always look on Twitter and it'll tell you shared from Facebook or shared from Instagram or shared from wherever. You might even start to notice one or the other popping up a lot. That might give you some insight as to hey, you know what, maybe I should jump over on Instagram because I see a lot of people posting from Instagram or whatever, so just something to think about. I don't know. This is rabbit hole stuff here.
Yeah, I know. We're going to finish up with 2 points that I just can't leave these points out. I know we've kind of spoken here for a while, and we've kind of given some good nuggets to the audience. But there's 2 kind of things that I liked what you mentioned, and I can't just leave the podcast without mentioning. You kind of said that you prefer to sell singles than albums. What do you mean by that? Why sell singles or over an album? Wouldn't you make more money off an album compared to a single?
Well, to be clear, I sell singles and albums. I just think that today, in today's day and age, because there's so much information out there, if you go a year, if you spend all your time working on an album and you go a whole year without contacting your fan base, without anything new, they might forget about you. Or you got to start the whole hype machine up all over again. You got to wind that sucker up again. But when you drip out an album by the single, then you get to focus on that song. So that song now becomes its own promotional item, and you're getting people. And I actually found out I made more money overall by releasing stuff by the singles, because what happens is, for instance, I'm a big Name Your Price guy, right? I would use Bandcamp for that, and I would do Name Your Price. Well, people were giving me $5 to $10 in some cases for a song, and that would be every month, so I would release a song every single month, and I would generate this income. Well, guess what? A lot of those people still bought the album when it came out. They still bought a CD. So the album is still there. You're just building it one song at a time, and you're making a big push. You're creating all this buzz. You're selling more of it because you're really focused on it, instead of having a track that would have been buried at number 7 or 8 on your CD. Now it gets all this focus on it. So you're kind of getting the most out of each piece of content, or in this case, a song, every month. And you're also learning about your marketing as you're doing it, because you release something in January, you're going to learn something that you can apply to the next one in February. So by the time you even get to the album, you've generated all this interest and you've kind of dialed in your marketing. So that's why I think it is. But most importantly, you stay in front of your people every single month, and you have something to talk about on a consistent basis, and you have a steady flow of content. So that's why I think that
singles are better than albums.
Yeah, yeah, leading up to it. I tend to think of this stuff. I know I'm probably going a little too long, but I think of it kind of like the way the movies, industry works. Like where they come out and they release this big movie, and then and then after a while, like the movie, or in this case, the single kind of fades out a little bit. Well, now you can come back a couple of weeks later and say, okay, now we're on iTunes. You kind of limit